ancient biblical prophets wrote about the future. Today, theologians are poring over those scriptures with a firm belief that their prophecies are coming to pass. Journey now into the world of eschatology on Prophecy in the News with author and lecturer J.R. Church.
We have the author of the book Nephilim Stargates, the year 2012 and the Return of the Watchers. With us on today's program, his name is Tom Horn, and Gary Stearman is here with me and him, and we're going to have a roundtable discussion on various aspects of this book that will, I think, fascinate you. Be sure to watch the entire program. Gary has the first question.
Well, Thomas Horn, author of Nephilim Stargates, has opened a number of biblical ideas to modern interpretation. We live in an era of technology. We live in an era when technology is changing on a daily level. There is an intersection between technology and what the Bible predicts for the last days. And right in the opening pages of this book, and JR, this is fascinating, Tom Horn mentions a mission to the moon, Apollo 11. And we have recorded in abbreviated form a conversation that took place between the astronauts of Apollo 11 and Houston. And Thomas Horn, welcome to Prophecy in the News, and tell us about this conversation, because this is fascinating. Apparently our astronauts have seen what we would call UFOs while they were on the moon.
Well, this reference that you're making is in the introduction to the book. It is a piece of transcript that has, in some quarters, been criticized as not being substantiated. There are other people. Otto Binder gave sworn testimony that it was true. Also, the former chief of NASA Communications, Maurice Chatelain, gave sworn testimony that it was common knowledge that the Apollo astronauts had actually saw and spoke in their two-way transmission to NASA, which was picked up, which was blanked out by NASA, but was picked up by ham radio operators, that there was an alien presence on the moon that was saw. There were ships that were there, that they were huge, that they were enormous. I put this in the introduction, so have some other researchers used this information. And so as far as it being disputed by some, I think you look at the bigger picture and you realize that many presidents, Carter, Reagan, others have talked about, and in fact Reagan before the UN even talked about his, how he sometimes questioned, how the world would come together if suddenly facing an alien presence.
Now our audience would be interested in hearing your take on who these UFOs would represent. Usually the interpretation is that they come from other planets, maybe from Epsilon Eridani, some exotic star in some other part of the galaxy, and they're here to help us out. Assuming that UFOs are real, and assuming they've been seen by our top people, are they from other galaxies, other planets, or maybe it's something else?
Yeah, well, my study into this area led me to conclude that if this is technology, it's technology, nuts and bolts type technology that is something entirely different than the kind of fabricating of metals and the use of fossil fuels that we're accustomed to here on Earth. In addition to that, these things seem to behave sometimes more like living organisms, intelligent. They seem to be able to move in and out of our reality. Maybe they are 10-dimensional. Maybe they are 5-dimensional. Maybe they have a known science that is something that is far surpassing anything that at this point, at least in our development, we can even begin to comprehend. But I agree that even on the secular side, secular researchers, the best of secular researchers have agreed that these things are behaving in a way that is comparable to angelology and demonology, that they seem to be a kind of intelligence that may even be at war with each other, certainly are using the human race when possible.
Not from another galaxy, but from another dimension.
From another dimension, maybe.
Now let me read what you have written here on page 1 from the transcript. Neil Armstrong reportedly mentioned seeing, quote, strange lights, end quote, on the moon and said, "We have company," before Mission Control switched off the live feed. And then it is said that this was picked up by ham radio operators. What's there? Mission Control calling Apollo 11. Apollo 11 said, "These babies are huge, sir, enormous. You wouldn't believe it. I'm telling you, there are other spacecraft out there lined up on the far side of the crater edge. They're on the moon watching us." And of course, there's more. You'll want to get this book. I can tell you. Just call the phone number at the bottom of your screen and order it. It's $14.95 plus shipping and handling. Call today. Order it from us with either Visa, MasterCard, American Express, or Discover card, and get this book. It's a fascinating read, and it'll help you to understand this angel study in the Word of God. Who are these angels, both good and evil? Gary?
Well, J.R., Satan is referred to as the prince of the power of the air. We often see UFOs, according to, I guess, thousands of witnesses flitting here and there through our atmospheric heavens. Sometimes they're witnessed as a light that will appear and then disappear, winking out, going to another dimension. And you're making the point in this book, Nephilim Stargates, you're saying, in effect, that maybe they're coming in and out through gates of their own making, what the sci-fi people call wormholes, or who knows what it could be. But the idea that angels may have technology is a fascinating idea.
By the way, you remember the book of Enoch? Now, in the Zohar, the rabbis wrote that these angels were seen going through the sky, much like the birds in the opening chapter of Genesis. This was written in the Zohar. But Enoch goes on to say that they didn't, and by the way, from this came the idea that angels had bird wings, white feathers, and they could fly, which is not really aerodynamically designed for this atmosphere.
That's true.
But Enoch said they flew around in flying houses, and that he entered these houses and looked up and down the hallways and saw what the floor was made of and the walls were made of.
He uses the term flying house, which I think is fascinating. Yes. Tom, this is fascinating to me because, and for the sake of our Christian friends who are watching today, and they're saying, well, these fellows have gone completely around the bend. We haven't gone around the bend as far as you may think, because the Bible speaks volumes about angels traveling in vehicles. Elijah, for example, was picked up in a fiery chariot, and if we saw that today, probably we would say, there's a UFO picking up Elijah, would we not?
Right. And even down through history, there are pieces of artwork in the 16th century, other periods of time, where church fathers would detail in paintings what was seen by parts of their flock or out in the country that was seen by the Fatima apparitions. I mean, different times and different places where people have recorded a phenomenon, and the language seems to be similar. It was circular in shape, it moved erratically. My wife and I were driving years ago, and I thought I saw a speck of light moving across the windshield. And the more I looked at it, the more I realized I was seeing something that I couldn't account for. It was circular, it was very high up in the sky, it was moving erratically, it was breaking every law that I knew, about how craft would be able to move through the sky. Stopped, my wife got out, and we watched it for a few minutes. And we didn't tell anybody that day, but the next day, all across the Northwest, from Oregon to Seattle, people reported that they had saw something moving through the sky, and they called it a UFO. The Statesman Journal referred to it as UFO. So was it angelic? Was it something that we couldn't explain? Certainly we couldn't explain it, and neither could anybody else who saw it, but it wasn't known craft as we understand